Hello, welcome to the live stream. Please let me know if the mic is working because I took this mic down last week to record a piece of the mic. Anyway, please let me know if you can hear me. I'm going to look at the chat and make sure that people can hear me. Joe, your nose says, good evening, everyone. Great to be here. Glad to see folks here. We do have a donut. We're going to talk interest rates, what's going on with interest rates, and why it's tied to inflation. We've talked about interest rates a lot, but they continue to matter, and we continue to have news about them. David says the sound is too low. Well, the audio settings shouldn't have changed. It should have just been, is it off or on? Interesting. Adam says it's working. Eric says we can hear you. Meteorex says we can hear you. Okay, good news. I don't know what's up if it is too low. That is a thing that theoretically someone can adjust. Possibly not me. The settings for my audio are not where I can reach them. So, we have a donut today, and it is really beautiful. It is a sour watermelon donut. I believe we've had this one on the live stream before, but frankly, at this point, I've eaten 150 donuts on these live streams or whatever, so maybe 200. I don't know. What are we at? And because of that, I have trouble remembering what I have and haven't had. So yeah. Dora can fix it. She is napping. She's napping. Her like two modes today have been eat things off the floor, of which there is really a lot because I am moving. You might have noticed like my background is kind of changing, but if I were to pan up, the shelves are pretty much empty above it. And if I were to pan over, none of this is happening because you don't need to see it. But it's like a lot of boxes over here. Moving is fully happening now. We also like spent all of this weekend. So like I had to work all weekend, but because it was a holiday yesterday, Aaron had like the Friday to Saturday and the Sunday off, although not really because he ended up working anyway. But like kicked butt. So I would like go to work and then I would get off work and then I would come help. My parents helped as well, and we worked on the ADU that we're moving into. So we've been like painted the bathroom, put up beadboard wallpaper, took out the sink, assembled a bunch of stuff, got rid of a bunch of stuff. It's really just a lot going on. So I can see the wall boxes things are thinning out. Yeah, there used to be like a whole cabinet here. It is not there anymore. Sounds like you need a donut checklist. We actually have a donut database. We have like a thread where I put my like ratings and if I had a flu for the week and everything inside the forums. But I don't search it very often. I could search it. I have the data on whether or not I've had this before, but I'm lazy. And so we're not going to search it. We're just going to find out. They rotate these seasonal flavors out, and I like sometimes don't know if I've had them before or I've had like a slight variation on them. Search sour watermelon on the forums and only got 4 journal entries. So if you've had it, it's not in the log. Interesting. Okay, thank you. Fuzz Bubbles knows where the back is. If I get passionate about something and speak in my excited finance voice, that might help. I have to say, when it comes to the excited finance voice, I am really thinking that I need to stop doing these live streams at 5 p.m. This is also like 5 p.m. my Sunday night as far as my work week. And this is not when my circadian rhythm is like up and at 'em, but I'm like committed to these for the rest of the summer. I've like put my schedule around doing these on Tuesday nights. So we're just gonna we're gonna live with it, and it is gonna happen on Tuesdays for the rest of summer, and then we'll like reassess. When I move, we're gonna find a new time to do this. Donuts, number of weeks in a year. Yeah, I know. And then, but like some weeks I've done double donuts. So ADU is in fact slowly being achieved. David says, I have a complaint about the latest episode of the House Files where you asked about our advice should you move in after you made the decision. We hadn't made the decision at the time we filmed the episode, but I realized we did post it after we'd made the decision. But it's been really interesting to see people's feedback. What happened is that we filmed that episode and then we got an updated set of information, which we did not realize, which was that the rent was going up by extra $100, which I talked about in this live stream last week. And because of that, we were like, fuck it. We also just found out like another piece of information, which is that we're going to have to start paying the full mortgage soon on the house, not just interest only, which is what we've been paying during construction. So pretty much we are decided. It's actually been really nice. It feels like we're working towards something as opposed to being in like a weird holding pattern. And I think it's going to be fine and successful. Well, anyway, it's lovely to see you all. Thank you for joining me. The thing that I wanted to talk about was interest rates, which I have, of course, talked about tons on this live stream because they're important to monetary policy. They're important to your everyday life, even if they feel slightly more abstracted. This is one of those things where I think a lot of people think that interest rates are this economic stat that like is constantly bandied about, but doesn't really affect you if you like aren't holding debt or if you've got a fixed rate on your mortgage or your car loan or whatever, or like, oh, well, you're not like earning so much money on your bank account that like the interest rate matters. But interest rates, when we're talking about them as far as central bank interest rates, so Federal Reserve, Bank of England, which are the two we're going to focus on today. We'll also talk a little bit about the EU. But when you talk about central bank interest rates, it has a cascading effect that eventually does affect you, even if you are not someone who is borrowing a lot of money like big corporations, or even if you are not necessarily making tons of interest off your bank account. And the reason that interest rates affect you is because when central bank raises interest rates, it kind of sets up this like domino effect across the whole economy. And what central banks are trying to do when they change the interest rates, so let's say they raise interest rates, it's because inflation, a thing that everybody knows affects them, right? Like you understand that when you go to the grocery store and get the same amount of food, it costs a lot more than it did like a year and a half ago. Like people understand that. And either you're making choices where you're not getting as expensive of foods, you're getting maybe fewer foods, or you are just accepting that part of your budget going up. Like you are aware that inflation is affecting you, like in almost every economy in the world, even economies that have deflationary currencies, they are affected by inflation because of international trade. So, you know, even if you are not tracking interest rates, what the goal of central bank interest rates, moving them up and down, is that it is supposed to slow inflation. And we have ended up in this very tricky period where we have high inflation, the highest that it's been since the 80s. And we also have a very tight job market. And a very tight job market means that theoretically, you know, unemployment is low. And theoretically, people are, the economy is not doing as, it just means that the economy is hot. So if the economy is hot, meaning like, you know, people are out there continuing to buy things, you know, inflation is going up and it's hard to find workers. One of the things that happens when you have a tight labor market, when it's hard to find employees, is that you can sometimes end up in a wage price spiral, which is that because the labor market is tight, employees are demanding more pay, and that can be one of the factors that then drives prices up. So wages go up, companies then choose to raise prices, and then workers who are in hot demand because there's still a tight labor market post-COVID say, well, the price of everything is going up, so I need more wages, which we are seeing. We're seeing more and more workers, especially people that are in service industry jobs in kind of the lower paid part of the economy are demanding higher and higher wages. There's been less wage growth for the upper earners in the economy because they essentially less important to the basic functioning. I mean, oops. And there's been the labor market hasn't been as tight, right? Especially as we've seen some of those very high paying jobs in tech and everything have layoffs, whereas we are not seeing mass layoffs amongst factory workers, amongst meat packing processing workers, amongst retail employees. In fact, we're still seeing labor shortages among those kind of lower middle class jobs in the economy. So those workers are also the most affected by inflation because when food goes up and food is a larger portion of your take-home income, you have less discretionary income, which is true when you are lower income, then that means that you need to see more of a change in your, it affects your pocketbook more and you need to see more of a change in your wage. And so we've got a lot of problems going on with the economy right now where it sounds like it's great that we've got this tight labor market. It's been fantastic for workers to be able to demand more rights. We've seen a lot of unionization. We've seen a lot of workers asking for more money. And it is one of many factors. I am not putting all of the blame on workers demanding more wages, which they should. But it is one of the many factors that is right now making it really complicated to tamp down inflation. So how do central banks tamp down inflation? Well, one of the ways that they do that is they raise their interest rates. And the interest rate that the federal bank or the Federal Reserve or whatever your central bank raises is actually not really the interest rate that you are paying. What that is the interest rate. They have a couple different tools. One of them is the discount rate, which is what they charge to banks for banks to meet their reserve requirements. So the banks don't have to have all of their depositors' money, which we've talked about when we talked about all the bank failures. Not all the bank failures, the 3 bank failures that have happened. We shouldn't kick off a shocking amount of bank failures, but when they raise that discount rate, which is how much they put at their little overnight window, it's called the overnight window. It's not actually like a drive-through 24/7 window, but I like to imagine our federal chair person and are just sitting behind with a little headset and a little visor and handing out loans through the overnight window to banks when they need to meet their reserve requirements, because when every single depositor has money in there, the bank is only required to keep a certain percentage, and that's called the reserve requirement. And reserve requirements vary based on the type of bank and all sorts of other factors, but the reserve requirements are also set by the central banks. One of the harshest tools they have at their disposal is they can raise the requirement of how high the reserve requirements are. They haven't really done this yet, and that's because it's a really rough lever for the economy. When they raise the reserve requirements, it means that banks stop lending as much. When banks stop lending as much, it slows down the velocity of money in the economy because suddenly fewer businesses are able to borrow, fewer people are taking out credit cards or auto loans because banks are not able to lend as much of that money, which means it slows down the velocity of money in the economy and it hopefully brings a tamp down on inflation. All of this to say, we have had historically high inflation in the US dollar, probably something to do with the amount of spending that we did to deal with a historic pandemic. And all of the very bad things that brought and all the money they needed to spend as a government. So we have pretty high inflation going on. Some of it has to do with supply chains from the pandemic. Some of it has to do with greedy corporations making profits. Some of it has to do with the fact that workers were demanding higher wages when there were labor shortages and their jobs had become more risky during the pandemic. All of these factors combined means that we ended up in a situation where we had high inflation. The Federal Reserve, one of the ways that they can fight that inflation is by doing what is called open market operations, which is the buying and selling of bonds on the open market. You don't need to worry about what this market is. Once again, you can imagine it on the other side of that drive-through window. It's a different part of the Fed. If we're imagining like the Federal Reserve as like a money colored McDonald's, there's like the discount window over here where they're lending money to banks at the overnight window. And then on the other side, we've got the open market operations, which is like a bunch of people that are part of their various Federal Reserve banks are on this committee, and this committee decides how many bonds they're going to buy or sell at any given time in order to hit their target rate. And their target rate is tied to how they want to stimulate the economy. If the economy is really slow and sluggish, like it was during the recessions, then they will sit the interest rate really low. And one of the things that's been going on is that the US got used to extremely low interest rates. We had very cheap money, which is good for expanding the economy. But when you've got really low interest rates, you start to get pretty high inflation. And so if you raise interest rates, you can bring inflation down. However, most rich economies in the world have been experiencing what the United States has been experiencing, which is a tight labor market combined with a very sticky inflation, meaning the inflation is not coming down as fast as we wanted. And they don't want to raise interest rates too much because if they jack them up, it has a lot of negative effects. People have already seen it. We have, when I was writing Slate's advice column, half my letters were people being like, I don't like the house that I'm in, or we need to move, but I feel like we can't because we got a low interest rate and now interest rates are double that. So we couldn't afford a mortgage on a similar or even like half as small of a house because interest rates have gone up. The average car note as of last month, new car loan is at 8.99% in the US, which is pretty high when people were used to 0 or 0.25% car loans if they had good credit. Obviously, low-income people have always paid higher rates, generally because they have less opportunities to build credit, and credit scores affect what you pay for your interest. Not universally true, but generally in rough categories. So there's a lot of negative effects that happen when you raise the interest rates. They have been trying really hard for the past year and I just mean central bankers everywhere, except Turkey, but we'll come back to Turkey. What they've been trying to do is every quarter, they essentially will say what they're going to do with interest rates. So they'll like signal what they're going to do. And the big news this week was the first time that they decided not to raise it, but they also said that they would still later this year. So instead of seeing a 25 basis points, so 0.25% hike on interest rates, as a lot of people thought we would, the Federal Reserve instead said, actually, we're not going to raise interest rates anymore because it's getting really high. This is the fastest they've raised it because inflation was so high they were trying to tamp it down. And everybody just kept pointing out the job market because one of the worries is if you raise it too fast, you can like way overdo it. I actually thought the indicator team at Planet Money had a really good analogy for this, which is the Federal Reserve is like, when you like want to get into the shower and you want it to be the right temperature. So you're standing outside the shower after you've turned on the water and like you're putting your hand into it to see if it's hot enough yet. And it's like still cold. What they're doing right now is they're like fiddling with the knob and they're like checking it with their hand to see if it's at the right temperature. And the problem is if they like really raise interest rates too much and they like push it up, it's going to then get way too hot. If they if they, try to toggle it off, it could get too cold. So they're really delicately adjusting this thing, but there's a lag. Just like when unless you've got a tankless water heater and you've got instant hot water, generally your shower is not immediately the temperature that you want. And that's kind of what's happening is like they can raise interest rates, but then they kind of have to wait to see what's happening in the economy. And that's why they're taking a pause in the US. Now, we can talk about Bank of England, but I see a lot of questions and thoughts in the chat. So I'm gonna check in on the chat before we start dealing with Bank of England because the shit's scary over there. Okay. I believe the way they measure the unemployment rate describes how many people are drawing unemployment and not an actual measure of how many people are employed or unemployed. No, okay, so there are a couple different methodologies to the unemployment rate, but it is not actually tied. There is data about if people are actually receiving unemployment, but it's not. And I agree that methodologically, it does have some downsides in that, like, you often will lose out on what are called discouraged workers, which are people that have been searching for a job so long they haven't found one. So they've stepped out of the workforce. It also doesn't do a good job of measuring people that are maybe underemployed, which was a really big problem for my generation post the Great Recession. A lot of us working a lot of part-time jobs, and we weren't being counted as unemployed, but we were underemployed relative to like what we wanted to be. But the unemployment rate is not a measurement of whether or not someone is collecting unemployment, as all of us probably know. Whether or not you qualify to collect unemployment is extremely different than if you are unemployed, but you have to be someone that is seeking work and wants to work. And so there are metrics included in the unemployment rate that we're talking about here. I think even just anecdotally, most people are aware that the labor market is in fact quite tight. But we are seeing a lot more slowing of the labor market in those high income professions that had just like banner years of making way too much money when the stock market was doing really well. And now we're seeing a lot of constrictions in those tech jobs and sort of those higher earning ones. Federal Reserve equals McDonald's, trillions served. Yeah, correct. It is trillions served. If I was like a better cartoonist, I feel like there would be a very funny for a niche audience comic illustration out of this. 8.99% on a car loan. Good golly. I mean, here's the thing is like, that sounds wild now because we've gotten so used to how low interest rates are. But that was a good mortgage rate at certain times in the past. Interest rates are meant to wiggle around. We just got really, really used to cheap money in the United States. The economy doesn't have a thermostatic mix valve. Only Jerry Powell. Oh my God. Pretty good. That thermostatic mix valve, I would like to consider this a crossover with the House Files now. It does seem that everything is interconnected. It's correct. Okay, how much do we want to talk about Bank of England? Do people want to talk about Bank of England? Because things be weird over there. We can also talk about the EU a little bit, but the EU is pretty much seeing the same problem as the United States, but on kind of a smaller, but somehow more complicated scale. Generally, well, I should say the Eurozone and not just the EU. The Eurozone, which are countries that use the euro, which therefore has the European Central Bank, has been dealing with very similar things. They also just passed a new budget, which includes a lot of spending. One of the reasons that we are seeing high inflation right now is because of all the spending that rich economies in the world were doing, where they were borrowing. They were essentially spending more than they were raising in tax revenue. Which, of course, we talked about when we talked about the debt ceiling like a bazillion times. So, but Bank of England is absolutely going to have to do a rate rise. So, the big news was that the Federal Reserve kind of took a pause this week and said, hey, we're not going to do a raise right now, which immediately had effects on bond yields. I don't know how much we want to get into that, but I can get into that if you want. But the Bank of England is going to set its benchmark rate to 4.75%, most likely on Thursday. The thing about these central banks is that they have to hint what they're doing, but also they don't want to give the wrong hints, because the whole markets move when they do so much as sniff in the direction of an interest rate. And that was a sniff that, maybe I'll just move on from that. But I had a funny joke that is maybe not appropriate for the airwaves, but about finance and sniffing. Okay, anyway, the Bank of England is supposed to rise its interest rates on Thursday. If they sniff too much in one direction, then it moves the markets. And so there's a lot of signaling that goes on when it comes to monetary policy. So they have incredibly high inflation going on in the United Kingdom right now, which is a combination of their disastrous budget shortfalls, the fact that their government is in freaking shambles right now. It's just people resigning all over the place, and how many prime ministers can they go through in a year? And so their inflation rate is right now close to 9%, which is very, very high historically. And the it's essentially their target is 2%, which is the same target for inflation that the US has. So we accept that there's some amount of inflation in an economy in order to get economic growth. If you have zero inflation, then likely you're not an expanding economy. But 2% is the target rate that they set. We are currently exceeding that, but things are stabilizing a lot more. The thing about inflation is that, it's often prices tend to be sticky. So if prices go up, they don't usually come back down. And so consumers will be feeling that kind of tightened inflation for a lot longer than the data may suggest, because if it starts to stabilize, the data will be inflation is kind of coming down, but that doesn't mean prices are going to drop. It just means the rate of growth has gone down. So theirs is very high, almost 9%, when their target is 2%, just like ours is 2%. And it's a huge issue in the British economy in particular, because so many mortgages in England and Scotland are variable rates. And because they're variable rates, when you do these rate hikes to try to combat inflation, it means that people's prices can absolutely spike. And then they also have a cost of living crisis going on with energy right now. And that is because of a bunch of factors. The primary one being the Ukrainian war and Russia and oil, all of that. But other factors include, and are not limited to, fiscal policy in the government and Brexit. And because of that, there is really, really bad economic turmoil going on right now. They also have a very large public sector in the United Kingdom. The NHS represents a very big chunk of their total workers. And NHS is, of course, funded by taxes. But it means that cost of living increases with this high inflation could end up being a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's that wage cost spiral. And that's particularly notable when such a huge chunk of your workers are in the public sector. Public sector workers make up a higher percentage of, I'd have to get the exact numbers, but it makes up let's see if I can get it really quick. Higher percentage of workers in the UK economy than in most other developed economies. I think, where else is it really high? There's a couple places where it's really high. I mean, it's very high in China, but it's kind of hard to figure out. Um, so the public sector employees in the United Kingdom is close to a quarter of the workers, which is very high. And then the US, I believe. Okay, public sector size. We're going to do OECD, which is rich countries. Okay. So, United Kingdom does not rank as high as a lot of Scandinavian countries, actually, where more people work for the public sector. United States is lower. Greece has had a high number of government public sector workers. That was part of their financial crisis back in the day. Yeah, they don't anymore though, because they were like forced to have all these austerity cuts. They rank lower than the US on the OECD list. Yeah, they're at 14.6%. But this is also 2012 numbers, which was when they were having the financial crisis. But everyone wants to put off raising interest rates. I'm always disappointed with Japanese central bank. Yeah, I mean, the Japanese central bank has different things going on. And so I think it is important to remember they've got really complicated stuff happening. They've got a depreciating currency. It must be really hard to be a central bank with a depreciating currency. The number for the US is old from this very quick list I pulled from the OECD. It's 2013, but it's 17.6% is public sector. But note that public sector is not necessarily, because we're a complicated country, that includes like state and federal. It's not all federal workers, obviously. And also military is public sector, and we have a insanely well-funded large military, so there's that. But yeah, these are old data. I'm trying to find out what the China number is. They won't be in the OECD, but China is quite high. In the Eastern Bloc countries, percentage of public sector employees was like, 70 to 80% back in Soviet days. In Oman, apparently it's 78.7%. I'd have to pull the data from this. So that's very, very high in Oman. And Cuba, communist country, 77%. Belarusia, it's 39.3%. And Russia is 40%. So, but, nothing like... And then China, they claim it's 28%. Maybe. A lot of this data is like, it's only as good as you can get out of the government. So, you have to take many of them with a grain of salt. Or they're just really complicated to count like they are in the United States because of all of our states and everything like that. We got off track. We're now discussing public sector employees. It's all connected, but... So, Bank of England is raising interest rates again, but it's, like, causing full-on chaos. And, it's real bad. Also, maybe someone who is in a country... I mean, Europe's asleep right now, but, like, someone in a country that, has variable rate mortgages as like a standard, how is that not stressful? Because it just sounds so stressful to me. Like Canada also does mostly variable rate mortgages. Maybe it's just because like I came of age during the Great Recession and I ARMs and like balloon mortgages and everything were just so responsible for so many parts of the financial crisis, and they just seem so terrible for consumers. It's kind of wild to me how normal they are in a lot of other countries, but that is a great example of how interest rates can affect people where in like an everyday way if you do have these variable interest rates for your mortgages where they tend to only be like 5 or 10 years. So should we eat the donut, y'all? It's pretty early, but I've been talking a lot and I could go for a donut. Oh, I also got exciting news today. I don't know how much I can tell you yet, but I could probably tell you some of my exciting news. I tweeted it, so I can tell you this. I am so glad we got a fixed rate mortgage for the longest period of time we could. 5 years. That's so short though. That's so short. I'm glad you did too, but I can't believe that like 5 years is a long time for a fixed rate mortgage. Whew. All right. Here's the donut. There's my phone too. But here's the donut. It is a sour watermelon donut. I think I've had this one before. I don't know why it wouldn't be in the database, but look, it's got little flakes on it. I don't know if those are actually watermelon seeds because they look like too small, but we'll find out. It smells sour. It's very fluffy. It's falling apart everywhere. It tastes like, not like Sour Patch Kids, but sour Jolly Ranchers, if you've ever had those. It's got a good shell on the top, though. I can't figure out what the seeds are. They're too small for me to figure it out. Maybe it'll say it on the website. It's good. It's not as sour as I thought it would be, though. It says fresh sour watermelon glaze. That's all it says, which doesn't tell me anything. Oh, that was a good sour chunk in there. It's good. It's not like so sour that your face is puckering. But it's very solid. And it doesn't taste so extreme on the candy side of things. I think it's 4 out of 5. Eric says, is it black sesame seeds? I think it might be. Maggie in the Wood says, I definitely remember this one, and I think it was really good. I feel like I remember it, too. I don't know if maybe I just forgot to update the donut list. How many donuts do y'all eat in a week? If you're just referring to me, y'all, I eat 1 donut a week on this live stream. The price of donuts has not increased, although these are pretty spendy donuts anyway, because they're kind of like artisanal. But that's actually a good example. There's something called menu costs, which is why certain prices will take longer to increase So menu cost is the cost to change the price of goods. And it's one reason that you see like a lot of smaller businesses will absorb input costs. So the price of flour, let's say, for donuts goes up. And a small business will usually absorb that until they can't anymore. Because the cost of raising prices is what is called menu cost. And this theoretically refers to like the actual cost of like reprinting the menu with the prices and like, you know, nowadays re-inputting all the prices in your POS system and, you know, all of the like friction that happens with raising prices. But menu cost is like commonly used as an example of why you see prices be sticky, and why you don't see when the price of inputs drops, prices will drop back down again. Especially when it comes to small businesses, it isn't necessarily because small business owners are capitalist like pigs who don't want to pass on any savings to their customers. Usually small businesses are the last ones to try to adjust prices because menu costs affect them so much. And that kind of makes sense when you think about it, right? Like, if you look at like Amazon, the prices for various products on there change like daily. But when you think of your local bakery or dry cleaner that does actually have physical menus and things like that, they are much less usually responsive to the change of price inputs and transport and all of that. And one of the menu costs is, especially for in-person businesses and small businesses, the friction that they introduce when their customers are like, wait, but burritos were $5 last week. Why are they $6 this week? And they're like, well, it was harder for us to get in because of the snowstorm, so we raised the price of everything $1. You know, they have to bear the burden of that. But if you want to yell at Amazon about the price of things going up, you're just not going to be able to. Right? Like you are not able to like contact you. I mean, I guess you could chat at some poor customer service employee and be upset about the price of your like grippy socks for working out going up. But realistically, are you actually going to do that? So yeah, those are menu costs. Thanks for letting me explain more economic concepts out of anywhere. Have you all seen how I did show this off, right, last week when I got it? How beautiful my little stationery drawers are. It's very exciting. Yes, I do own too much washi tape, but not enough to fill up this drawers yet. Know Your Joe says, what is a term when a product's price stays the same and the quantity is reduced to achieve the same effect as raising the price? A word was coined by Planet Money's team, which a lot of people have been using, which is called shrinkflation. And that is not like a term that's been commonly used in economics classes, but someone's got to make up the word. And so, yeah, they coined the term shrinkflation. So like, I've noticed that, especially in like grocery stores where you'll like get, you know, it used to be that you got 4 bagels in a package and now you'd get 3. I'm not buying bagels at the grocery store. Don't come for me. It's just the first thing I could think of. But yeah, you used to get a packet of 5 and now it's the same price, but it's a packet of 4. Like that kind of thing. Yeah, shrinkflation. But that was actually originally coined by the Planet Money team. Know Your Joe's like, I like the explanation of economic concepts. Well, thank you for coming to Talking Dough and eating donuts. That's what we do here. Y'all, I am so tired. Oh, so do you want to hear my good news? We can keep talking about economics, or I can talk about my good news that has been over 2 years in the making, 2.5 years in the making, really. So today I found out that I got approved for Croatian citizenship. So that means that I will be getting my Croatian passport this year, which means I will be a EU passport holder and EU citizen, with all the rights and responsibilities conferred because of that sometime this year, hopefully. So ceremony to come. We are going to do a full video about it. There were a lot of bumps along the way, but I very unexpectedly got the news today that I got approved, as well as Aaron got approved, and my dad, and then my mom also applied, but I guess that's still stuck in the Croatian bureaucracy hell. So I really need to take Croatian lessons again, though, because last time I took a Croatian class was 2 years ago, and I have forgotten a lot of it. I could understand the, when I called the consulate, I could understand, like, what it was saying to me, but I was missing, like, every few words. Like, I was getting the gist. And then I could not produce words out of my mouth. I could, like, understand what was being said to me on a basic level, but yeah. Shrinkflation means one bad bag of coffee weighs 12 ounces. Same with cereal. My cereal box was redesigned. It was off the market until the box shrunk. Wow. Interesting. Until after the box shrunk. Yeah, I will say the 1 pound bag of coffee is like 12 ounces now. I have noticed that. Bagels in a grocery store almost stopped. Heresy. Hey, people do buy them, but I was literally just, I saw my earrings and I thought bagels, because people don't buy donuts in a grocery store, but they also don't buy bagels in a grocery store. Montreal style bagels. I think I've mentioned this before on the live stream, but I used to be the bike deliverer. My weekend job was that I would bike around and deliver a Montreal style bagels here in Portland, and they were so good. And she stopped producing those bagels during the pandemic, and I've been so sad because we do not have good bagel options here. There is one lovely bagel company, which I will say because they sponsor Breakfast on the Bridges, Spielman Bagels, but they're very good for Portland bagels. I do not think they compare to either Montreal or New York style bagels. Thank you for all the congratulations. How did I get approved? And congratulations. I got approved because the Croatian government finally got around to processing my application from 2 years ago. So we applied in May of 2021, and it took about 6 months to put together the application. We recorded that like whole process. But the reason that I qualify for it is because my last name, if you can't tell, is Croatian. My grandfather is from Croatia, and so the path to pursue your citizenship by heritage got a lot easier in 2020, and so I took advantage of that. The Guinness Book of World Records attempt, here we come. Yes, so Eric remembers that I've been threatening to, as a celebration of getting my EU citizenship, make an attempt to set the Guinness World Record for fastest time to visit every EU capital city by scheduled surface transportation. Which means by train, bus, ferry, not by taxi. And I am very hopeful I can do that. I probably won't be able to do it this year just with PTO because we're like building a house, but maybe next summer I can do it. It has to be in the summer because I need a bunch of ferries and some trains that only operate during the tourist season in order to successfully complete it. However, I will say that there's now some new night trains that came out that just started up in the past couple months in Europe. So I need to like rerun the whole route again. So yeah. Why Croatia? Because it's my citizenship. So I mean, it's my heritage. Yeah. I wasn't choosing that out of a hat. Bagels have to be boiled in sugar water and then baked in a wood oven. It's the only way. Otherwise, they are buns with pretensions. I don't necessarily agree with that because New York style bagels are not baked in a wood oven usually, and they are still really delicious. I agree that Montreal style bagels are great, but I do think New York City style bagels are also very good. Whatever we are doing on the West Coast here, bagel wise, generally not great. Every time I go to a bagel place that someone is like, oh no, they're really good, I'm usually disappointed. I think Spielman is great because they donate to us. And I will say they're good by Portland standards. I will say that when I was living in London, I was only there for like a month, and my office, there were quite a few people that were like, oh, you like bagels? You should try this bagel place. It has the best bagels. And the bagel place microwaved my bagel. They microwaved it at the bagel store. And it was not a good bagel. And that is what Londoners kept telling me was the best bagel in London. Like, bar none, it was the place that everyone said was the best bagel in London. I'm doing a Dorothy Killigan style tour. I'm going to look up who Dorothy Killigan is. What kind of tour did she do? I don't know who this is, but wait, she wrote a tell-all book about JFK assassination? This all sounds very interesting, but I didn't know anything about this. Okay, well, I'm going to order that book from the library now. But please tell me about what her connection to trains are. Yeah, it was, the microwave bagel was the worst, I gotta tell you. West Coast is the worst for bagels. Even when Wisconsin was better. Yeah, in Cincinnati, there was a really good bagel place called Marx's Bagels. And they had like good New York City style bagels, bagel store situation there. And that just is not, yeah. That's not why. She did a tour by surface transportation in the 30s. I mean, great. She didn't, there's no books on this. Is there a book on this? How do you know this? Tell me more. Can I read her stuff? The person who went to every country in the world by scheduled surface transportation, has a Guinness World Record on it, Graham Hughes, kept a blog the whole time he did it, which took like over 4 years for him to do it, mostly because it was really hard to get to Seychelles because of pirates. But that had most of the reason that it took him so long. But I do think that it is like his blog, not his style of writing is not for everyone. He does have kind of long tangents, but I guess if you like long tangents, if you listen to this live stream, you probably like long tangents. I literally don't remember the last time I had a donut or a bagel. I mean, I don't think you have to eat round foods. It's not important to life. Also, if you're not a gluten person, you probably wouldn't eat either of those very often. There are gluten-free options of both, but I always, when I interview people and I'm doing a sound check for audio, I always ask them to tell me what they had for breakfast. And the interview that I did last week, all 3 of my interviewees had a bagel for breakfast, and I found that very amusing. Her book about it was called Girl Around the World, available via interlibrary loan to your local library. Interlibrary loan's really expensive here, so I'll have to see if I can get it. I can ask them to get it. But, Girl Around the World. Thank you. Pirates. I guess that could be a hazard for a world record. Yeah, well, the problem is that, like, the way he was, because, he couldn't just hire a boat. I mean, for both financial reasons, but also to get the scheduled surface transportation record, you can't have, like, your own vehicle because they're trying to discourage people from, like, just land racing or sea racing. So the way he was doing it was by doing it by hopping onto freight ships, but through certain regions, no freight ships would take him as a passenger because of insurance reasons, because of all the piracy. So, yeah. Modern Girl Around the World. Wow, this actually just turned up a bunch of interesting stories anyway. So I will look for her book though. Thank you for the recommendation. We have tons of footage from this whole citizenship attempt, but I didn't want to post anything until we had found out if we gotten approved. And technically, I've really only just talked to someone on the phone with the consulate who said we were approved. So probably I am not going to make a video about it until after it's all said and done. But then I'll be able to include like whatever bit of the ceremony we can film. It might not be the actual ceremony, but at least like going in to the consulate for the ceremony and everything. So we will post a video about the whole citizenship thing because it was like a wild ride that involved like at one point my dad finding out that his birth certificate was wrong and all sorts of things. So Aaron is now done with work for the day, but has 4 hours till his flight home. Can you see if you can get a earlier flight? I guess there's not as many right now, but well, I hope to be asleep when you come home. Did you all learn anything about interest rates today? Did you learn anything about economic policy? I hope I'm delivering at least somewhat of what you came for. I'm telling you, these 5 p.m. Tuesday live streams, every week, I'm like, I don't think this is working the way I want it to work. But at least now you all know I am soon to be a dual passport holder. I'm very excited about it. And then hopefully Guinness World Record holder somehow. I'm going to have to tell my job that I need to take a month off next year to go attempt a Guinness World Record. So. No, your Joe says, I learned a lot. Thank you. Adam says, always learning. Thank you. I'm glad that I'm providing some value to you instead of just you watching me get hyped up on sugar. When you mentioned at the beginning that someone could adjust the volume out of your reach, I assumed Aaron was there and just busy. Nope, just totally, I'm totally here alone, except the cat, and, you know, the cat could try to adjust my volume, but I don't think she would be very good at it. Maggie DeWitt says, that was great. I miss the live stream so much. Thank you for joining. Like I said, I'm really considering moving back to a different time. We have so much going on right now that I'm just going to not change anything until the end of the summer when we're moved. But I would really like to find a time that I feel like works for more people, because I do think the Tuesday nights are really rough, and works with my slightly odd schedule. So, K-Walk Comedy says, I have to watch the replay. I missed the good stuff, donut and all. I'm sorry. Should I spoiler the donut rating? K-Walk Comedy, if you're just joining, the exciting news of the day is that I will soon have a Croatian passport. Soon-ish. In several months. But it's very exciting. So, I'm usually driving Friday at 5. Or Tuesday at 5. I was going to say, I'm not going to do it Friday at 5. Yeah, I mean, it just, the time does not work for a lot of people. I did it because I thought it would work for my schedule, but it turns out that I really don't like doing the 5 p.m. live streams very much. I tend to be pretty tired by this time of day. So, which is why we had moved it earlier on Sundays. So, I admire you for still doing a live stream with all the moving going on. It is very hard to move. I agree, it's very hard to move. We're doing it in like a less stressful, well, I would say, like because we have both places and we have the storage space, I feel like we've got like way more latitude, and we're only moving like a couple miles. I feel like I have to keep doing the live streams, because if I stop, I will maybe never start again. So, and I love doing these. I like seeing you all. So we're just going to soldier on. We're going to get through the summer. I'm not going to say that my content is always going to be the most delightful, but it's nice to have you all here to catch up on how your life is going. See you in the comments if you're here on the replay. And, yeah, it's, you know, my brother helped me move. I think so we could do our live stream together. I hopefully am gonna have a lot of people helping me move. So, how is it going? Because you just finished moving, right? Like very recently. How stressed are you right now? Jenny says, I learned that other countries have fixed mortgages for longer than my country. You realize that in the United States, you can get a fixed mortgage for 30 years. You get the same rate for all 30 years. The average person refinances like they either refinance or move like every 7 years. But yeah, ours are 30 years. K-Walk Comedy says it still work. I'm sorry. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Y'all, thank you for joining me. It's nice to see the people that were able to come join towards the end. Like I said, we are still working on a time. So if you have made it this late into the stream or the replay, please let me know in the comments or the chat if there is a time that you're like, this works well for me. We've tried a couple different times over the years. I am trying to find a new time for the fall that'll work better for a lot of other people. So Jenny says you can't even get a mortgage for 30 years here. 25 is the longest. Yeah, 25 and 20 are quite normal in a lot of places. The 30 years become kind of the norm in the US, but you can get a 15 if you want to get one. Getting the help I need is stressful. Folks in the South work on a slow timeline. Oh, still trying to find an electrician. I think that's a curse no matter where you live in the entire world, but sending you all of hiring the people that you need I want you to get honest people for a good rate who actually are reliable. I'm sending you all of the good energy. It's not easy anywhere. Yeah, we're at the stage of this triplex situation now where we're like, ugh. Also, the ADU, for people that were following from last week or watched the House Files channel, the ADU that we're moving into, we worked on the bathroom all weekend, and then the contractors were going to come in and do the kitchen change today, and they were only supposed to change the counters and shift over the cabinet. But it turns out that the cabinet that the sink is on has rot in it, so we have to get another cabinet for that. So it's already escalating. It's already escalating beyond the already escalated one. Jenny says, get some rest. Thank you for your time and knowledge. I really should be doing stuff for work tomorrow because it's my Monday tomorrow. I don't want to, and I want some rest because I didn't really do a lot of resting on my weekend today. And I kind of just want to watch a new K-drama that came out on Netflix. But if I do that, I might not have food to eat for the week. So I guess I do have food for tomorrow. But then I'm at skating practice until 8 p.m. tomorrow. So I'm not going to have food on Thursday. See, this is probably a bad plan. Thank you all. It's been lovely. Have a safe week. I will see you next Tuesday. Until then, pet a cat if you have one available. Stay hydrated. And I'll see you soon. Bye. Oh no, Fuzz Bubbles had a question. I'm going to respond to it. This was a fake ending. I thought you were already planning on replacing the sink cabinet. We were just going to replace the counter and the sink. But the cabinet underneath it, we were hoping not to replace. But the cabinet has rot in it. All right. Now I'm really leaving you all. Stay safe, stay hydrated, pet a cat if you have one available, and see you next Tuesday. Bye.